What is up, guys? Step7 back with another video for y'all. In today's Fortnite video, I'm going to be ranking all of the sprites in Fortnite until the new update. I know, I'm sorry, this video is before the update. It probably will be released after the update, though. So let's get right into the video. Alright, starting off with the water sprite. With this sprite, you can replenish shields while in water for you and your nearby squad. Now, honestly, I think this sprite is not very reliable. And I say this because you are not very movable in the water and you're an easy target for anybody around you. So I think we're going to put the water sprite in a solid B tier. Alright, now we're moving on to the fire sprite, which creates a fiery burst when you deal enough damage to an enemy player. Now, the only problem with the fire sprite is usually when you're dealing a lot of damage to a player, you're close range and with a shotgun. So when it bursts, it can actually do damage to you. And I honestly think this is the worst sprite in the game. So I am going to go ahead and sadly put it in the F tier. It's just not very reliable and nobody really ever uses it. Alright, now we are moving on to the Earth Sprite, and this gives you a chance to find additional rare items when opening chests. Now, at first when you have the Earth Sprite and it's level 1, it doesn't really do too much. It could give you a pair of 7 sliders, maybe a flare gun out of a chest, but once this thing is level 5 and mastered, it is an absolute beast. I have pulled a gummy 0 point using this from a normal chest. This sprite is absolutely goated, and it doesn't even take that much sprite dust to revive when you lose it in a match, and that's why this sprite is an easy S tier. Alright, moving on to the duck sprite. So with this duck sprite, it was basically a troll sprite, and what it does is if you emo or jam, it replenishes your shields. Now, this honestly is not a very good ability in my opinion, because even if it's maxed out and you're emoting for 20 seconds, you're really only going to get 50 HP out of that. And that's shields. It can't even replenish normal health. And when you're emoting, you can't even move. You can't even use traversal emotes. If you move, it will not replenish your shield. So I think this sprite is an easy D tier. Alright, moving on to the Ghost Sprite. With this sprite, it grants you a Cloak of Duration upon reloading, and the Cloak of Duration is basically invisibility when reloading. This sprite is by far the best sprite in Zero Build, and I've been playing Zero Build a lot recently to hunt sprites in sprite chests, and that's why I think this sprite is an easy A tier. Now, I only say A tier because in builds, it is less useful because you already have the builds to cover you while you are reloading. So, A tier. Alright, we are going ahead and going to move on to the Demon Sprite. With this sprite, you can siphon some health and shields when you eliminate an opponent. Now, this sprite can be useful in certain situations, but the problem is if you are in a very good lobby and you kill an opponent, chances are they're going to have some heals on them. But if they don't, it can come in very clutch in 1v1 situations, so I think this sprite should go in C tier. And I say this because it can be useful, yet also super unuseful, so it's kind of in that even ground, so I think it goes in C tier. Alright, we're going ahead and going to be moving on to the Dream Sprite. With this sprite, it grants a random item at each level, exploding with legendary loot at max level. Now, this sprite can be very good and very bad. At level 1, it could only drop you a purple item. It is not a guaranteed legendary item until level 5. So I believe this sprite is not very reliable and it's not very useful. And also, this sprite does not do anything if it's level 5. If you jump into a match and it's level 5, it's not going to drop you any loot, so it's useless once it's maxed out. I think that's an easy C tier. Alright, moving on to the Punk Sprite. This sprite's description is very vague. It says possibly nothing or infinitely something. So basically what this does is the Punk Sprite literally does nothing for you, literally nothing, until it is level 5. And this is where the infinitely something comes into place. When it is level 5, you get infinite ammo for every single gun you have. Now, this really isn't that good for every gun in the game besides one, because there's so much ammo in Fortnite. However, if you pair this sprite with a firework gun, it is going to be absolutely broken. Now, I say this because you will never run out of ammo, so you will just infinitely know where everybody is at during your game. You literally have wall hacks the whole entire game. That's why I think this sprite is going to go into B tier. Alright, we are going to be moving on to the King Sprite. This Sprite is the savior of sprites. Its description says, your pickaxe deals more damage as you level up. Now, this is absolutely broken for build mode. You can literally take any wall within 2 swings. And in build mode, it's absolutely the best Sprite in the game, and it's easy S tier in build mode. However, in zero build, I think it would be an A tier. But it just doesn't really serve much of a purpose except for pickaxing people early game, but I still think it is a savior sprite, so I'm going to go ahead and put it into S tier. Alright, now we are going to move on to the 0 point sprite. The description of this sprite says, spawn a shield bubble junior when you use a healing item on yourself, excluding splashes and grenades. Now this is broken in long-range scenarios. If someone has a mythic hunting rifle on you and they shoot you and they still have 1 ammo, and if you start healing, you're safe. And then if you are in build, you can just crank 90s right after you heal off. And in zero build, you can use your shockwave and get away from the situation as fast as possible, or run up to them close range and hit them with a shotgun. However, this sprite is one of the rarest sprites in the game. It is literally the second rarest sprite in all of Fortnite besides the Grim sprite, and it has not been released yet as of recording this video. So just because of the rarity of this sprite, I'm gonna put it in A tier. Alright, we are moving on to the last sprite of the video, and this is the only icon sprite. It is the burnt peanut, that is right, and its description says, goop. When eliminating players, you may find more loot, sometimes mythic. This, honestly, I feel like is way overrated, because if you don't get a lot of eliminations, this is not a good sprite for you. And it's also a mythic, but it does have a lower rarity than the 0 point. You find about 1 of these every day. So with that being said, if you are a good player, this can be extremely broken. If you get a limb in the start of the game and you find a mythic shotgun, you're basically wiping out the whole lobby. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in B tier. Alright, that is going to be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will catch y'all in the next one.